Good morning, family and friends. First Corinthians 15 and 10. But by the grace of God, I am what I am. But by the grace of God, I am what I am. We have to be very careful that we don't begin to gloat in where God has placed us, where His grace has positioned us. The Israelites who had lived during the days of the prophet Amos felt that because of their strategic location, their economic prosperity, and their military might, they had become self-sufficient and they had done something on their own. They had made it. But their attitude of self-confidence and self-sufficiency was shattered by the words of Amos, this country preacher who thundered, "Woe to them that are at ease in Zion and trust in the mountain of Samaria." Belshazzar felt that he had reached the pinnacle of success in his rule. He got so cocky and beside himself that he took the gold and silver vessels which had been at the temple in Jerusalem and used them for one of his elaborate drinking parties. But when the festivities got roaring, got into high gear, he and his guests were frightened out of their senses by a hand reaching out of nowhere, writing on the wall, "Mene, mene, tekel, Sharon." The rich fool spoken of in the 12th chapter of Luke thought that he had arrived, that he had done some things on his own. He forgot that, but by the grace of God, I am that I am. When he tore down his small barns and built larger ones and stored away all of his surplus grain, he was so confident in his own skills that he said, "So thou hast much goods laid up many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry." But we all know that shortly after reciting this selfish soliloquy and conceited statement, God said to him, "Thy fool, this night thy soul is required of thee." None of us has reached such a point of self-sufficiency and independence that we should forget that if it had not been for the grace of God, but for the grace of God, I am what I am. Every time, every victory is short-lived. It's just a brief reflection on the territory that God has brought us through. The circumstances he has delivered us from is just a reminder to us that but by the grace of God, we would not be where we are. It is not a means for us to gloat in where he has delivered us from and where he has placed us, but it is a testimony of how he has brought us through where we came from to where we are right now, but by the grace of God. Now, when we search the pages of the Holy Bible, we find no person better in a position to say, "I've arrived, I've accomplished some things, I've made it," than the Apostle Paul. After his conversion on the Damascus Road, the rest of his life was a series of knocks downs and recoveries, get up, knock down, disappointments, and successes. If you follow his life as a minister and missionary, you will find him consistently and constantly coming up against opposition. At Lystra, he was stoned and left to die. In Philippi, he was thrown in jail. There was a conspiracy against him at Ephesus, and he had to be hustled out of jail in Jerusalem to escape the angry mob. But after each incident, he said, in essence, "But by the grace of God, I am what I am." Listen, 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 listen. He writes the paradoxical statements in Second Corinthians. We are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. We're persecuted, but not forsaken. We're cast down, but not destroyed. In other words, I don't care what comes my way. I am always going to remember, but by the grace of God, I'm where I am. I am who I am, despite every weapon formed against me, but by the grace of God. Not on my own merit, but by the grace of God. Not on my own wit, but by the grace of God. Not on my own ingenuity, but by the grace of God. Not on my own know-how, but by the grace of God. But by the grace of God, I am that I am. God has delivered me, and I declare, if God had not been with me, I would not be here today, but by the grace of God. Brothers, sisters, family, and friends, I caution us to always remember who we are, what we have, our victories, but by the grace of God. Us waking up this morning, but by the grace of God. Clothed in our right mind, but by the grace of God. Bills paid, but by the grace of God. Children doing fine, but by the grace of God. Degree in hand, but by the grace of God. Woke up this morning, but by the grace of God. God bless you and keep you is our prayer.